So I'm now officially recording, which means class has started. Welcome to the beginning of week 2 of Principles of Business. I'd like to thank Taylor and Deidre and Robin and Mary and Tamala for showing up. It's awesome when you guys do. It gets a little lonely over here if not very many people show up. And this is most of your class, so that's pretty good. Today or this evening, we're going to be on chapter 4 to start, and it's entitled Business Ethics and Social Responsibility, and it's doing well by doing good. Okay, so anybody here have any opinions on business ethics or actually social responsibility at all? Let me rearrange my screen. This happens when I share my screen. I have to rearrange the rest of it. Where is my chat? There it is. All right, so nobody has any. Well, if coming through here, you have any opinions, let me know. All right, so can everybody see the screen that says chapter 4 on it? See the slideshow? Yep, good.
Yes.
Awesome. So we want to define ethics and explain the concept of universal ethical standards. As we know that some ethical standards are, that's what I'm looking for, change from society to society, right? From civilization to civilization, from country to country, from person to person even. We're going to look at what are business ethics and ethical dilemmas, discuss how ethics relate to both the individual and the organization, define social responsibility, examine the impact of stakeholder groups. Social responsibility is a weird thing, and we'll cover a little bit. Explain the role of social responsibility in the global and describe how companies evaluate their efforts to be socially responsible. So our ethics, we all have our set of ethics, certain beliefs in right or wrong. Okay. If you have a universal ethical standard, that's ethical norms that apply to people across a broad spectrum of situations. Most of us find it, almost like the 10 Commandments. Don't kill, don't steal, don't, mess around with your neighbor's wife or husband, and however it goes. Just those basic principles that we all know we're on pretty solid ground if we stick by them. Our business ethics apply right and wrong, good and bad in a business setting. And so that's a little bit different because, and we'll see here in a little bit, you'll see things that are legal and not ethical, and you'll see things that are ethical and not legal. And legal is a funny thing because all through history, certain really crappy things have been legal. Okay. But definitely not ethical. And so, Nazi Germany, it was definitely legal to throw people into Auschwitz and put them in gas chambers, right? That was national policy. And all the way back to when we were still British colonies, or even before, slavery was legal in many countries, including North Africa, China. In fact, the word slave comes from the term Slavic, which is, that they were kind of the first ones. And for the most part, that's a weird thing too, because for thousands of years, Greece had them, Rome had them, so it was always legal. But you know, now when we look back on it, we go, well, that was a really crappy thing to do to people. Ethical dilemmas, decisions that involve conflicts of values. Now, people's values, like I said, depending on what society they live in, religious beliefs, you know, what country they're from, you know, these uh, conflicts may be completely different. If you've ever done business with someone, you know, in another country, they don't always follow the same standards we do. Okay. I know. So there you go. Legal and unethical, promoting high calorie, low nutrient foods with inadequate information about the risks. So things high in salt, high in sugar, high GL carbs, you know, potato chips, soda pop, uh, heck, go all the way to alcoholic beverages, beer, you know, you name it. Anybody, what else? What else would be bad for you that they push? Anybody know? I can't think of any more.
Used to
Look
be
behind Taylor.
cigarettes, but they don't really push that anymore.
No, did you know they used to, doctors used to prescribe cigarettes to pregnant women?
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's weird.
And you could smoke in a hospital. So you could sit there next to your mom's bed when she was having surgery and just light up.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yep. So yeah, that's definitely, and cigarettes are a bad deal. You know, I can't think of, I know and there's been different studies. The nicotine itself is not really the problem, but in modern day cigarettes, it's all the chemicals they put into them that are really, really bad. Do we have any smokers in here? Nobody's gonna fess up, are you? Well, if you do, quit immediately. You know, my wife, she smoked for years and years. And when our first grandson was born, she put him up cold turkey, which is hard to do. And she hasn't had one since. You know, she was an unpleasant person for a little while, but you know, that comes with, you know, fighting any sort of addiction. And nicotine is very addictive. Um, producing products that you will know break before their time. Anybody have an example of that? Okay, a lot of times we have computers. Um, a lot of times car manufacturers will put things out there that they know is not a good product. I know in my car, and I bought it, you know, I bought it knowing this, but the transmissions are a real problem in my car. And they're really usually replaced a lot, um, which is kind of funny, but you kind of you can go into it knowing that. But you know, you would think after all this time that they could build a transmission that wouldn't break. And the weird thing about mine is the harder you drive it, the longer the transmission will last. It's if you drive it gently is when it breaks. So so I drive mine like I'm in NASCAR or F1, whichever one you like. Okay. Legal and unethical, paying non-living wages to workers in developing countries. We see that all the time, right? Uh, you know, some of the ones, Nike, places like, you know, people, the shoe manufacturers, a lot of clothing manufacturers, they send all that to places like China, India, and people are making, you know, pocket change to make these. Apple did it a lot. The company that Apple used, let me see if I can find it here. For some reason, I'm drawing a blank. but there's a good to go along with it if I can remember who it was. I'll on it. Foxconn, there it is. I don't know why I couldn't remember that. So there was a company called Foxconn that were making iPhones for Apple back in the day, and this has been quite a few years. And it was like almost like a city. You lived and worked there. You know, they provide you housing, and the working conditions were so hard that they worked you so hard, and the work conditions were so bad that people were jumping out of the windows and committing suicide on a regular basis. So instead of increasing pay, lowering hours, making living standards better, Foxconn's solution was to put nets around the buildings. So look, Deidre said, nope. Yes, their solution was to put nets around the building. So if you jumped off, you get caught, you just get caught in the net, and then they could send you back to work. So very unethical. Legal in China, right? And many people believe it's unethical to have the minimum wage at $7.25 now. Although I'm not sure if I know anybody now who makes $7.25. Most companies have come along, and knowing to get a decent workforce, you have to pay more. And I remember when the oil field was booming between 17 and 20, when I was out doing horizontal drilling, we were in places like Pecos, Texas, and Carlsbad, New Mexico, and Midland, Odessa, and they were starting car hops out in like $14, $15 an hour at Sonic. You can make $15, $16 an hour at McDonald's because, you know, they were so busy and they needed workers, and they figured the only way to get them was to pay them more. And because these places were where the oil field was booming, and so you had all these oil field workers, the pipeliners, the drillers, all these people coming through there and spending a lot of money. So they wanted to make sure they could take care of their customers. So that's legal and unethical. We have legal and ethical, which is producing high quality products. Well, we like that. Everybody likes that. Rewarding integrity and leading by example. Now, what can you say about those? Those are all good. Although in a lot of companies that I've worked for over the years, doing a good job usually just led to more work. You know, the better you did, the more work they would pile on you until you finally, you know, broke underneath the pressure. And the people who were mediocre performers, they just kind of let slide on by. And that's a real problem in some companies. Not this one, by the way. I'm not pointing out CCC. I actually love it here. This is a great job. One of the I really happy here. Treating employees fairly, contributing to the community, and respecting the environment. Do we have any environmentalists here? Oh, I didn't even read that, Robert. Robin said Kia was a throwaway car when they first came out. Yes, yes. Anybody old enough to remember the Yugo? The Yugoslavian car that they imported that was just terrible. But many cars in the 80s and 90s were pretty terrible anyway. You had a long line of just, and everybody did it. Ford Tempo. Oh my gosh, one of the worst cars ever made. But Ford, Chevy Cavalier. Oh gosh. Oh, you know, they were just terrible. And but technology has caught up, and you can spend very little on a car. And because I remember when I was a kid, you know, cars made in the 70s and 80s, if you put 100,000 miles on it, it was time to get rid of it. You were done. Those cars were just, you know, horrible. And 100,000 miles was a lot of miles. Now, you know, those cars aren't even broken into 100,000 miles. You know, there's no change of spark plugs and wires and you know, coolant, and you know, they make coolant now worth 100,000 miles. Before that, you'd have to change it, you know, every time you turned around. So there was that. And then, but no environmentalists here. Nobody who wants to save the environment, save the trees, the whales, the dolphins. Somebody needs to save the Miami Dolphins, but that's a whole other thing. Okay, we go back to illegal and unethical, embezzling money. Yeah, nothing you should do because you can end up in jail. We actually, when I had the drilling company, we actually had a lady who, one of our office ladies, who was who'd been stealing money for a while, and she a lot of times we'd have to cash out money to like one of the guys. He ran out of money. He needed us, to help him out till his next paycheck. And so we'd cash app him some money and take it out of the next paycheck. Well, she would cash app him money and then she would cash app her money. Or she would order stuff from Amazon on our corporate account and have it shipped to her there at the office and take it home, like clothes and shoes and all sorts of stuff. Eventually she got caught. And when she did that, another good one. And I don't remember the name of the small town. It was here in Oklahoma. People that worked at the water department, and they had like a whole little gang there. If you paid, okay, so you come in and you write a check or pay with your credit card for your water bill, that would go directly to the bank. Put on your account. Now, if you come in and pay cash for your water bill, they would take it off your account and they would never put it in the bank. So they were splitting thousands of dollars a month between like 3 or 4 people. And they even got caught when there was an audit done by the state of Oklahoma. So, and kind of the lesson to be learned there is never do that, because eventually you'll get caught. Okay. Somebody's going to catch you taking that money. There's always a trail. Another one of the things that city was doing is they were using the city credit card for personal expenditures like vacations and stuff. So, and I actually talked to the woman who was the auditor a few years ago. And so when she was coming in and they were auditing this city, one of the things they said is, hey, we need all the credit card statements so we can look at these expenditures. Instead of, printing out a credit card statement or, the one you get in the mail, they took a yellow legal pad and wrote stuff on it and told her, here's our expenditures, here's our statements. Because they knew if she actually looked at the real statements, they would be caught. So eventually she caught them. People got in trouble. It was a whole thing. Illegal and unethical, engaging in sexual harassment. I may have to report Bob. Just teasing. He doesn't harass me. It's mutual. No, just teasing again. Stop. Hey, there's Mary. Where's the kiddo at?
He just ran to the kitchen to get a plate for his cookie. He'll be back.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fair. You have to have a plate for your cookie.
Yeah.
That is, and that's just a given to me. So sexual harassment's bad. One of the problems with sexual harassment is it's just bad. The other thing is the lines have got a little muddied between what is and what isn't sexual harassment. I mean, we have Title IX, we have things that, but it's not always spelled out clearly. And part of it is because men and women have not been working together in the workplace historically very long. Okay. I mean, we're talking about what, 50, 60 years that's really been going on. Prior to that, with some notable exceptions, women stayed at home, raised the kids, guy went put his suit and tie on and went and did his job. And at that point you could make it with a one income family. But at some point that changed. Now, some notable exceptions, World War II, when they shipped all the guys off to Europe, and the women were working in the factories. And then, but when the guys came home, they sent the women home, right? When the guys came back from Europe, they sent the women home, and the guys went back to work. Um, so some notable exceptions, but up until that point, it was really hard. Up until the '60s, early '60s and on, it was really hard for women to be in the workplace, and part of it was just up until then, we didn't have a dependable birth control, right? So that was an issue. Hygiene, things of that nature that kept women home. So as technologies come across, we have feminine products, we have so many different kinds of birth control, been able to integrate the workforces. And like I said, one of the things is it's kind of new as far as we know. So there's definitely going to be issues until we get it figured out, because honestly, we haven't really got it figured out yet. We just don't. And I mean, we know certain things are bad. It's not, anybody ever watched the show Mad Men? About the advertising firm, back in the day. It's not Mad Men for sure. Where you got to slap your secretary on the hiney, and you were drinking whiskey and smoking cigarettes in your office, and times like that. So there's things that are obviously bad when it comes to sexual harassment. They're really fairly obvious, and then some things we're still working out. Practicing inclusion with competitors. You go to a competitor and you give them a heads up, or you make some sort of deal with them to undermine your own company and line your own pocket. That's been done a lot as well. Encouraging fraudulent accounting. Anybody remember Enron? Yeah, bad deal, and the accounting was just a nightmare. And there was a VP. I'm gonna look her up again because I can never remember her name. She was the Enron whistleblower. Sharon Watkins. And she had went to her boss and mentor at the time, Kenneth Lay, who was in charge of Enron. And she said, "Hey, I've looked at the books, and this accounting isn't right. So something's bad, something's up. You need to fix it." And she did this all up and down the chain of command. I mean, she was high up. She was a vice president. She was nothing to sneeze at. Her and Kenneth Lay had been involved in business together for years. They were friends. He had mentored her. She had a big place company, and he ignored her. And it ended up being that they knew all about this anyway. They knew they were inflating the numbers, and nobody wanted to face up to it. And so the problem is, she did something that when you see problems like that in the company, the first thing you should do is report them to the authorities. She should have went to the SEC. Whistleblowers have certain protections, especially when you go to the the government. What Ronald Reagan said, however many scariest words in the English language, or I'm from the government and I'm here to help. But you have to go that route, because what she did is she went to the newspapers and blew the whistle. And when she did that, she did not have any legal protections as a whistleblower. And so it tanked her career. I mean, she has made a comeback. She's been to the company. She was on speaking tours. She's written books. So, but there was a while she was toxic. She was radioactive. Nobody wanted anything to do with her. And they fired, and all these other things happened, and besmirched her name. But like I said, and even if you do, and just be aware, even if you do go to the authorities, they can only give you so much protection. So you have to know what you're doing, and we'd be willing to take that hit. You see, illegal and ethical, illegal and ethical. So we're looking at things that the law frowns upon, but we know, is a good thing to do. Providing rock bottom prices only to distributors in underserved areas. Now, that's a weird one, because it's almost some sort of weird. I don't even know how to put that. I mean, some people do it. I know Amazon used to do it, like Amazon Prime. I know it used to be what, $99 a month, but if you were a student, it's $69 a month. And so, some of those things, or if you're Alexa just beeped at me. I mean, the faceless lady, because I don't like saying her name because then she starts talking. So some of those things are okay, but I think it can come to a point where it's not okay. Giving veterans discounts, things of that nature. I, you know, uh, it's just, you got to pick and choose on those, what you think is right. Collaborating with other medical clinics to guarantee low prices in low income countries. So there is some kind of collusion there. These income countries, we have to realize that once you're born in America, you're in the top 1% of people in the world. Okay. Even the poor people. I know Mary gave me a look like, nope. The poor people are still richer than most of the people in the rest of the world. You have India and Pakistan and China and these places where people are really poor. I mean, we just think we know poverty. This is, and there's no in a lot of these countries, there is no a safety net like in the welfare state. Food stamps and things of that nature. If you don't find a way to feed yourself, they will let you starve. So, there was I heard an Indian guy from India who was really trying to immigrate to America, and they asked him, "Why do you want to immigrate to America so badly?" And he said, "I want to go to a country where even the poor people are fat." So that gives you some kind of basis on, that they don't have the same structure we have. And medical care, here, although our medical system is really, our health system is really screwed up, but anybody can go to emergency room and get treatment right then. Now, you may not be able to get long-term treatment, but if you have a heart attack, they're going to stabilize you. You cut off a finger, they're going to, they're going to do their best to sew it up. Many places don't have that. If you can't pay, you don't get taken care of. And then in many of these countries with universal health care, they've had to ration care, because when they're taking care of everybody in the country for free, then the system becomes really, really burdened. So, but we, not to diss our care, but we have kind of the worst of both worlds. We have private companies involved, insurance companies, and these other things, but we also have the state subsidizing them. So it raises prices, and it just becomes this whole mess of, let's call it collusion between private industry, insurance companies, government. So I would say we would be better off with one or the other, but that's just my opinion. I probably, okay. Ethical standards, trustworthiness. Are you going to do what you say you're going to do? Respect, just like the song. I won't sing it for you though. They respect for others, respect for yourself. Okay. Uh, there's a saying, people who, you see my beginning video, I'm a big fan of Jordan Peterson. I know he's kind of a divisive figure, especially politically, but to stay from that, he wrote a really good book, his 12 Rules for Life. And one of them was treat yourself as if you're responsible. Treat yourself as if you are someone responsible for helping, whatever. Treat yourself fairly. If you would go out and help somebody, Deidre, if Deidre is going to go out and help me, she'd probably above and beyond. Put herself in a place where she's really out there giving it all she's got. But a lot of times people don't treat themselves the same way. They neglect themselves, and you shouldn't do that. Also, responsibility, that kind of goes along with it too. You take responsibility for yourself, and that's really hard to do. That's really, really, really hard to do. Fairness is hard too, because that's another line that kind of the goal kind of moves on fairness, right? And as society moves, the goalpost for fairness moves. So once again, that's one of those things that they put out here, but what does fairness really mean? It could be something different for Taylor, something different for Robin, something different for Mary. Fairness could mean something completely different. How many people have kids? Deidre, you got any kids? Yeah. No, Mary's got kids. Taylor, you got kids? No. She's like, not me.
Good for those of you that do, but I'm an aunt. I can give them back. Like, no.
So no plans for kids?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm in school. I gotta focus. Got that business math I gotta keep passing, right? So
I can't. I'm gonna on. Well, if anybody who has kids, and especially more than one, treating the kids fairly is the goal, but do we really? I don't think we ever do. I think we really try. And many times it's just because, it's different. The relationship with the kids are different. The relationship between a father and daughter is different between a relationship between a father and a son. Relationship between a mother and daughter is different between relationship between mother and son. I think part of it, like just from my perspective, is number one. I don't know if you guys experienced it growing up, but my daughter was always daddy's little girl, so I would always took it easier on her. And then with my son, I had a unique perspective of the crap he was pulling, so he didn't get away with very much with me because I'd already been there. I pulled the same stuff he did, and so I cut him off, and it seemed unfair at the time that I would treat her one way and him the other. And I think my wife was the opposite, because she had pulled the mess that my daughter had, so she was always in front of her on that. And one of the things I used to tell my kids was, if you get over on me, it's not because you're so clever and smart and sneaky, it's because I let you. It's because I just didn't feel like having the fight. I'm picking my battles here. Caring is always good. And citizenship, I'm not sure. Once again, that's one of those, what makes you a good citizen? Is it being patriotic and supporting, certain things, or is it actually going against, your government and the state and certain things? Once again, what makes a good citizen? Somebody who's standing up for their rights, or somebody who, supports the government at any given time. Oh, I know. So they give you these broad terms, but the goalpost moves many, many times. Forgot to say on responsibility here. I think we should give a lesson on responsibility to a bunch of our politicians. the multiple touch points of ethics. Ethics in the individual, and it's influenced by personal needs, family, culture, religion, and personality traits. Now, your ethical standards will change depending on the situation. Okay. Have you guys seen Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Remember that? The bottom one, food, water, shelter, things of that nature. If those things are, you can change your mind real quick about whether or not it's ethical to steal a loaf of bread if you and your family are starving, right? I know that's kind of a cliche to say, but if you got starving kids, you will 100% do whatever it takes to feed them. So your standards will change. I would. A recent study shows that business leaders who score high on personality empathy exhibit high levels of ethical leadership. Okay. We know what empathy is, right? So, yeah, being able to understand other people's feelings. That's why sociopaths don't have that. They don't understand what other people are feeling. They're really good at faking, that, but they really don't have an understanding. There's something cross-wired here that makes them non-empathetic at all, and other people's pain and happiness are pretty much strangers to them. And same thing, not even sociopaths, but people with some level of autism have a hard time understanding other people's emotions, and sometimes their own. Ethics in the organization. Organization influence the ethical conduct of employees. They put rules. There are ethics standards in a lot of companies that if you cross the line, you're in trouble. And it may not come up to something that's illegal. Elements of a strong culture that involves displaying ethics related actions. Wow, I'm running out of time. Ethics related actions at all levels of an organization and accountability for those actions. And once again, it can be lethal. Excuse me. It can be legal and unethical, and you can still get in trouble for it, right? I'm trying to think of a good, for example, okay, it is 100% for legal for them to, if you're on a traffic stop, it is 100% legal for them to pull you out of your car. Okay. If you're just a little tip, if you're ever on a traffic stop and they say you need to get out of your car, you can't refuse. Supreme Court has said, I know, Taylor. Taylor, give me the look. Supreme Court has said that they can pull you out of your car. And so if they say I need you to get out, it's best just to get out. Now, if Taylor here, since she gave me the look, and they stop her for not using her blinker, and they pull over and
Everything. Get something more more complicated than that.
do what?
I said choose something more complicated than a blinker. I get pulled over for everything.
Okay. Well, I got pulled over the other day for doing 88 and a 65.
Oh, I got a 21 over as well, twice in a row.
Okay. And I will say the Tulsa County Sheriff was completely cool. He took my license. Seriously, I've never seen a cop so cool. He came by, took my license, registration, checked my insurance, went back to his car, run my license, came back. I said, Mr. Diamond, you don't have any sort of driving record, no tickets or anything. He said, I'm not going to give you one now. Yeah. He said, I'm not going to give you one now. Just slow down. I was like, because I couldn't imagine. I don't know what a 23 over would cost me. Pretty sure it would be pretty hefty.
Yeah, it's $489 for going 25 over. But I was late to Quiet Riot at Rocklahoma. It was a big deal. So
I missed Quiet Riot Oklahoma.
Yeah, I almost did too, but thankfully I didn't because of that stupid cop.
But I did get to see Five Finger Death Punch and Evanescence and who else did I see? Yeah.
Megadeth.
No. Dave Mustaine is the anyway.
Awesome.
And so if you're not heavy metal fans, you have no idea who Dave Mustaine is, but he is a god among men. Yeah, and my brother, who's a musician, one of my brothers, he posted a little thing. Who was the best? Who was the best guitarist ever for Metallica? It was like a multiple choice question. It said A, Dave Mustaine, B, Dave Mustaine, C, Dave Mustaine, D, Dave Mustaine. So yeah, but didn't they kick him out of Metallica for being too violent? Yeah,
Think so.
yeah. How violent do you got to be to get kicked out of Metallica
Well, you got
in
the Terror
the
Twins too. I
in
mean, they
the
didn't get
80s?
anything.
You what?
The Terror Twins,
Mm-hmm.
Motley Crue,
Oh,
Stevie Nicks, yeah, Tommy
so
Lee.
anyway, Tommy Lee, he's a mess, man.
Oh, mess.
Have you ever seen Motley Crue in concert? I know we got
I'm-
sidetracked.
I'm going in August.
Is the
So,
be
yep.
okay?
No, it's at TU. It's Motley Crue, Def Leppard, and Alice Cooper.
I got to see the fair English is hard, right? Farewell tour when Alice Cooper opened for them. They're at the Be Okay. And one of the things with Tommy Lee is he has a great big rail that goes all the way from the bottom stage all the way up to the second floor. And he straps himself in and he does a drum solo while his drum kit's like this and then going all the way up to the second floor on like a roller coaster deal. And then he does his drum solo going backwards back down. So yeah, pretty awesome. So enough talking about Motley Crue. Establishing an ethical culture. It involves backing up ethical words with documented practices, processes, and procedures well known around the world. So practice what you preach and make sure you have these things written down. I know when we started our company back in 2017, before I sold out in 2020, even an old salty dog like me who had been in the business world forever and had managed, helped manage many companies, I'd never built one from the ground up. And one of the things I learned, which was you have to write this stuff down. There has to be a procedure for it, because if you don't, then you don't have any recourse. So you have to have these procedures and they have to be well spelled out. If they're not, you can get yourself in trouble. So if you fire a guy, but he can say you didn't know it was wrong, hey, whatever, right? Formal code of ethics, formal written document that defines the ethical standards of an organization. Once again, you have to write it down. It has to be on paper. Same thing. Let me back up here. If you always, depending on the business, you always back everything up in writing. Okay. And I've been known to do this, kind of the CYA thing. You go have a meeting, boss, he tells you to do things a certain way, and you feel, that it may be a little squirrely, but he's the boss. I would usually go back to my office, back to my computer, and I would write him an email and say, dear boss, per our conversation, per our meeting earlier, you said blah, 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 blah. And I wanted to make sure it's clear the expectations, you put in all the flowery words. That way, if it ever comes down to it, you have evidence that, where it came from. So always cover your, always. And so always put things in writing, especially if they're questionable. And even if they're not, because things that don't seem questionable at the time can really bite you. Give employees the information required to make ethical decisions across a range of situations. I've worked for some companies where they were a little loosey-goosey, where unethical practices were even sometimes encouraged. I've had them that it was fine for me to buy driller's tickets for a potential customer and take them out to drink and do all that other stuff, and to try to steal them from someone else. That's not really ethical, right? Take them to night trips, whatever they wanted. Yes, that actually happens. But and then I've worked for companies who would never, ever, ever consider that okay. And those are the companies I prefer to work for, because when you have kind of loosey goosey ethics, their standards can change on you, and they can use that against you at any given time. You know, well, you took Mr. Smith to night trips and got him drunk to get his business, and we don't do that around here. Well, yes, you do, and why am I targeted, right? Steps for implementing codes of ethics: get executive buy-in and commitment to follow through. You set the policy, you set the punishments, you make everything clear. If you do this, this thing happens. If you do it again, it happens. You do it again, it happens. And then finally, you have recourse as a company, because even Oklahoma right to work state is one of the things as well. In Oklahoma, you do not have to have a reason for firing someone. You tell them to get their stuff and get out. But if you give them a reason for you fired them, you better make sure it's a good reason, because if not, they can come back and be litigious and have a lawyer. So, and each state is different. So the rule, so you need to know the standards if you move to another state. If you work in another state. As an Oklahoma-based company, we worked in Texas, New Mexico, Colorado. State had their own rules, and we had to follow the rules while we were working there. Establish expectations for ethical behavior at all levels of the organization. Okay. Expectations. People have to know what they are, right? Integrate ethics into mandatory staff training. Here, let me talk about expectations for a minute. I have an expectation that everybody's going to catch up their discussion, so I don't have to keep talking about it. Otherwise, I may go jump in front of a semi in the highway tomorrow. And then it's going to be your fault. My death is on your hands. But integrate it into mandatory staff training. Okay. Make sure people are trained, make sure they know what they are. It all goes back to making sure people know what the standards are, holding them accountable, training them on it. All those things are important. If any of those steps fall down, then you're putting your company at risk as well. And ensure the ethics code is global and local in scope. Well, you may not be a global company, so who knows? Build and maintain a clear, trusted reporting structure for ethical concerns and violations. Now, one of the things, is you should be able to anonymously make a complaint. Okay. I should be able to walk into HR and say, I believe Bob is sexually harassing me. And for them to be able to investigate it and keep everybody else from finding about it. Once again, Bob's not. It's consensual. Nobody's laughing anymore. But if it happens, because many ways that it used to happen was if you had a complaint against your boss or somebody else, they would shame you by letting everybody know. You'd be a snitch, or they let everybody know, and then they put out the story that it was false and is unreasonable. And some people were kind of untouchable, which goes back to established protection for whistleblowers. You be able to freely go in and make your complaint without repercussions. Now, is that perfect? Does it always work? No, not really. Okay, so we know whistleblowers, employee report their employer's illegal or unethical behavior to either the authorities or the media. Once again, though, if you go to the media like Sharon Watkins did, you don't always have protection. Okay. First thing, and the first thing you should do if you find something wrong, you go to your boss, right? If you can't get it squared away there, then you go to the authorities. Then you go to the paper, and somewhere in between there, you probably need to get a lawyer as well, somebody to protect your interests. Enforce the code of ethics. Okay, so let me see how many more we got, because I know we're running out of time here. Boy, I'm not going to make it through there because I am long-winded and I talk too much about Megadeth. Okay, the spectrum of social responsibility. Okay, no contribution on the end, less responsible is some businesses do not recognize an obligation to society and do only what's legally required. In the middle, responsive contribution, some businesses choose to respond on a case-by-case basis to market requests for contributions. And then on the other side, proactive contribution. Some businesses choose to integrate social responsibility into their strategic plans, contributing part of their business goals. Now, once again, that social responsibility, that's that moving goalpost. All right. Where does that set? Now, and some companies are really, really, really good. When we had our house fire a few weeks ago, anybody heard of Chewy, the dog food company that just ships it to your door? 100% buy your stuff from Chewy. Like 2 days before, we got a brand new bag of dog food for the dog, and this is like an $80 bag of dog food because she has sensitive stomach and sensitive skin, and you can't feed her just anything, right? And we still had half a bag left, and they just shipped a new bag, and I hadn't even opened it yet. Well, my daughter called Chewy and said, "Hey, there was a house fire. The bag got burned up." The next day, there was a brand new bag shipped overnight at my daughter's front door for our dog. And I've also heard that if your pet passes away, they send you flowers. How great is that? And they sent us the dog food for free. I mean, it was just, and it was no muss, no fuss. Now, I'm not sure if that's socially responsible, but that is some great customer service, right? That's taking care of your customers. I will never buy dog food from anywhere else but Chewy from now on. Stakeholders. The organization has a responsibility toward employees, creating jobs at work, but I don't know why they're on the top, because creating jobs at work is a byproduct of other things, right? Okay, they have a responsibility towards customers, delivering value by providing quality products at fair prices. Okay, customer service is also part of that. And then investors, meeting legal requirements, being honest, and spending money wisely. The stakeholders, your stockholders, those are where the responsibility for most companies come in. Okay, you have to make the people that invest in your company money. Okay, the more money you make them, the larger your company grows, the more employees you have. So you don't employ people just to employ people and give them jobs. You employ people because they're productive, right? And they're doing a job that makes money for the company, because if the company doesn't make money, then they no longer have a job, and it's this great big ugly circle, right? And then contributing to society. A lot of companies, Walmart is one of them. A lot of the big companies, they have great big charitable organizations. Bill and Melinda Gates is one of them, from Microsoft, which I think they got divorced, didn't they? But I think it's still the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So, and they use that extra money to contribute to society. And the environment, which, I'm not a huge environmentalist, but I want clean water, fresh air. I don't want all the trees dying. So yeah, we have a responsibility to the environment. I don't want you dumping your toxic waste into my groundwater. or blowing up trains and trying to kill half of Ohio. But that's a bad deal, right? So, and that's hurting the groundwater. That's hurting a lot of stuff. And they told people at first you could drink the water, then when the dead fish start showing up, they decide that's no longer a thing. All right. So, last one I'll go with is planned obsolescence. Computer companies are real bad. Cell phone companies are bad at it. Your updates on your cell phone many times make cell phone less useful. And so over a period of time, as they update it, and your cell phone becomes slower and worse to use, that encourages you to go buy a new one every couple of years. That's bad business practice. That's ugly. Anybody ever had that? Cell phone gets old, doesn't want to work right many a times. It affects battery life, processing power, and things of that nature. And that is part of planned obsolescence. Mac used to do it. Apple used to do it. All right. So, ladies, I have run all the way to 7:30. I will officially stop the recording. Maybe. There we go.